Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Travis Snail. I gotta take off these headphones. I had to make sure, I have no one else here to check. And now probably my hair is all messy because I'm a big hair freak, and that's why I don't like wearing those headphones because I mess up my hair. I'm Travis Snail. Welcome to a Geek First Review. This is a review of Jordan Peele's Twilight Zone. What I want to pimp right now, we got tons of reviews going on. Just the best thing to do is subscribe. And honestly, if you're a new fan, if you're an old fan, if you haven't done it yet, please go to iTunes and give us a review. Give us an honest review. We would love a 5-star review. And if you do leave a review, please do a written comment one. That's the ones we're looking for. We're trying to get to 200. That'll help us with our next milestone. As you can see with milestones that we reached recently, we have new audio, soundboard, stance, everything like that. So to help us kind of grow further, if you're a fan of us, and if we get Patreon, stuff like that, maybe you can't afford $1, $5, the best way to support us is to subscribe and review us, and that would help us a lot big time. So I hope this review will inspire you to do that, but just subscribe. We got tons of stuff. Pretty much every movie that's being reviewed or out there, we're trying to review it, get out there. I didn't get around to Dumbo. I had family in town, and no one else on the cast wanted to, so maybe in the future, but none of our fans really was like, oh, you're not doing Dumbo. So, most of the time there was one time when Jurassic World reviews wasn't coming out. Fans said, oh, is that going to happen? And we made it work. It might be a couple days late. Dumbo, no request. But we have our Shazam spoilers review coming out. I'm pretty sure have a Pet Sematary review. I don't know when that's going to be. That might be later in the weekend. Might even be next week. I'm not sure. We're working on details on that because it's a very busy weekend right now for all of us. Speaking of busy weekend, WrestleMania Watch Along is happening. That's going to be on Facebook. That's going to be tons of fun. Myself, Kyle Smith, Kirkland Patzer, Tyler Breaks, maybe some other geeks, and some of our friends joining us, so it's going to be a good time. And if you like Jordan Peele, what I'm about to talk about now, probably go check out our Us review. It's a very nice divided, also our opinions review. And then just subscribe. We got lots of good stuff coming up. Star Celebration, Endgame, Hellboy, and Ota's excited for that. But let's talk about Us. Let's talk about the Twilight Zone. Got Us on the mind. So I've been excited for this for a long time since they announced it. This is a show way back. I watched the OG version when it was late at night on my grandma used to, that's how I watched Three's Company. That's how I watched this. That's how I watched Batman 66, because she still watches stuff like Game of Thrones and Sopranos, but she still, of course, had a soft spot, like we probably will all at that age, for stuff of her generation. And I got introduced to a lot of that, and those were the three I remember the most. Batman, obviously, I love. Three's Company is fantastic. Big John Ritter fan. And Twilight Zone and Unsolved Mysteries. Love that as well. Twilight Zone, that is the OG, the original anthology series. That's the one that started it all. When you look at all the ones we have now, whether it was Black Mirror that's going on right now, whether you had Tales from the Crypt, any kind of version of a horror anthology has always been spawned from this. And that's because I don't believe anybody that works on any of these shows did not see Twilight Zone or an episode or hear the idea and be like, I'd love to do something like that. I could be wrong, but it had such a big impact. That song, if you don't know, I'm very surprised. It's something that always played, horror tales or morality tales, suspenseful episodes. You had the movie that came out, what was in the 90s, I think it was. I really enjoyed that. And I'm not an uber fan. I'm not on the way that, and I think because there's too many episodes, and I would actually love to go back. I've watched a few, but I've watched a lot. I mean, as far as recently, I've watched a few here and there, but I really need to go back because I know Jordan Peele and Simon Kinberg, who produced the show, put out their top 10. I had seen two of them recently, but I need to watch them again. I'm a big horror anthology guy. Trick or Treat is one of my favorite Halloween movies. I know I'm jumping all over the place, but I think horror anthology, when we did Love, Death, and Robots, that's the same thing when Briggs, it's like, I took away from that in our conversation that he's a big fan of short films and he really likes what they represent. That's the way I am with horror anthology movies or shows. I love just small snippets of a horror story because there's so many great horror ideas or thriller ideas or maybe supernatural that shouldn't and couldn't fit into an hour and a half, 2-hour movie, right? They're just kernels of a good idea. And that's why I think sometimes we see something like a Slender Man, lots of problems, but something like a Slender Man where that gets a movie, you go, this just doesn't work. It's just, and don't get me wrong. I can make Sharpie the movie, and someone could write a 2 great hour script. But I'm saying that there's lots of times where there's so many ideas where it seems like, oh, we didn't need a 2 hour movie. This or this version is not what the version that we've produced to be the movie is not what should be out there. And maybe you should go back to the drawing board or do something like this when you get these stories that are about a location, about a person, about a family dealing with some sort of problem, dealing with something like I said, supernatural, some twisted tale, or it's just a fun time. And that's what I think these first 2 episodes represent. And it's funny that this was coming back. Obviously, Jordan Peele, Get Out hype, Us, which I saw again. I really like, but I was very disappointed. I should say I like it, but I was very disappointed. Check out our review. Get Out, I quite like. I've liked it upon every watch. So I thought he was a natural fit. Everyone thinks that Us, to me, feels even more like a Twilight episode than Get Out. And he is just producing. He has his hand in it. I don't know how much he's in there, but it's not like every episode's by Jordan Peele, but he is also playing the narrator, the guy that brings us into the Twilight Zone, right? And great theme song. I love it. So it's funny how far we've come from that to where we are now. And I remember, so I was going to say, to shout out 2 favorite episodes is one, obviously everyone's going to go there, and I love it because of the movie as well, but the Richard Donner directed The Nightmare at 20,000 feet or above 20,000 feet. It's just a classic, just that guy on the airplane, he scares his mind and he sees a monster. And then the other one, I don't know the name of the episode, but it's this one where this woman is stuck in a shop, and during the day there's always seems something that's off, but at nighttime she can't get out of it. And then spoilers for a almost 60-year-old show now. She's like a mannequin in this store, and that's why she can't leave, and she's destined to stay here. And that's what I liked about, I remember watching The Twilight Zone, is there's something like a Masters of Horror, which I was a big fan of. Or what was that show? It was on NBC for a while. I think it was just called Fear. There's some that are just the movie monster, grotesque, swearing, blood, sex, and rock and roll, right? Twilight Zone was, to me, never that. There were darker ones, and I feel that they tried to do a lot more darker ones in the 2000 series that they brought back, which were not the greatest from the episodes I saw. I remember watching, being excited, it just not really landing with me. It was, I'd say, more of a whimsical sort of, there's definitely horror in there, but it had, I feel it was, especially at the time it came out too, 60s on TV, it was not super bloody out there, right? So, which is a great reviewing, Travis. Super bloody out there, right? But I feel like it was, you could still, for the most part, you could watch it with a, 8 to 10-year-old, maybe in the 60s that wasn't the case. But I feel like even nowadays, it was a tamer horror. Like they had that episode with the psycho doll, the doll that can talk. It was a bit tamer. Now we've in a world where we've gone through, like I said, all these different anthology shows, and I'd say the biggest one right now, easily, Black Mirror. A show that is rated R, a show that has no, there's no rules on it, there's no limits where it can go, and it tackles technology a lot, but it kind of goes in that route of sometimes there's whimsical episodes, sometimes there's just very political episodes, sometimes it's, and lots of them, very electronic, kind of technology centered. And then other times there's things like, and even lots of them still always have technology, but like San Junipero or Hang the DJ that are very, I think, in that whimsical, love story ones. And it runs the gamut, but it definitely leans more to that, I'd say, kind of that hardcore, that hard R in a way, where this new one has swearing, so it is updated, but it's funny to see it all go around, right? And it reminds me a lot of, and this is going to be a weird comparison, then I'll get in the show, and if I should recommend it, which I would, if you don't want to listen to Spill, I would recommend it. It's, these 2 episodes didn't blow me away, and maybe I'll just say that, and then I'll get into kind of my comparison of what I kind of thought while watching this. It didn't blow me away, but I really, really liked them. One, which would be the first one, the comedian, Kumail Nanjiani, I always mess up his name, Kumail Nanjiani, but I'm going to just call Kumail. I love that guy. I want him in every movie that I watch, every TV show. He's just the best. I think he's in Silicon Valley, that HBO show. I'm not sure, but I need to watch it and go back and watch his stuff. I'm just a fan of his. So for me, it was, one, I liked the concept. I liked the actor, but I think that that episode, it is very fun, but it's something we've seen lots of times, but I still enjoyed it, but it was very predictable. And I think that's one thing Black Mirror has over it, as far as what I've seen so far, is Black Mirror does just take the gloves off, and you have no idea lots of times. And that's where there's an episode, I think it's just called Crocodile. That was last season, not counting Bandersnatch. And it was just so predictable. You knew everything going on. That was strange for Black Mirror. And then you had the next one, which I loved the idea of it, which was the terror terror above what is it, 30,000 feet, 30,000 feet, kind of a tribute to 20,000 feet. So I love that I picked it up on the right way. If you love some of those classic, and if you even love the Twilight Zone movie, you got that right way. John Lithgow, great in that movie. So I liked the idea of that, and there were some really fun things played in there. I think where I'm going to come into as far as I recommend it or not, I recommend it if you're like me and you like that type of stuff. If you were alive or you were like myself, shown the original Twilight Zone, give it a watch. See what you think. I don't know, because I was talking about this with Kyle today as far as like, I wish this was binging because I could get through it so quick, because I find myself now, the way I'm getting trained through streaming and the way content's released is I'm finding myself getting out of loop with stuff when it's releasing weekly. I have to wait, and it's not even have to. It's just my mind feels like it's almost programmed that way now to wait and watch 2 or 3 together or whatnot. So if you don't want to I'd say if you watch first 2 episodes and you'll know if you like them, maybe it's worth to, or if you're kind of all right, they're fine, but I'd like to stay with the series, maybe wait till the very end and binge them all. If you just really enjoy it, watch week to week. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I'm not sure what I'm going to do as far as reviewing these going forward as well either. I haven't decided if I'm going to do one each week or I'm going to wait till they're finished. I'm leaning more towards they're finished and kind of do a ranking and whatnot. It's just easier for me, especially for the review and whatnot. If it's not and it's something like this is breaking the fourth wall. If something like The Mandalorian's week to week, we're going to do that week to week just because that's going to produce big numbers for us. Twilight Zone, if there's demand for it, if fans really want a week to week, then let me know. But for me, it's not nothing as far as these 2 episodes and maybe what I saw preview. I'm looking very interested in. I'm very interested. I like what I've seen so far, but it doesn't compare right now to Black Mirror. And where I was kind of making the comparison is when James Bond was kind of having its rut, GoldenEye came out. My second favorite Bond film all time. It's so underrated. It's so good. Love Pierce Brosnan. Always screw up his last name too. It was going through a rut and it was getting very cartoony, very comedic, very just out there, and it was just going over the top, blockbuster, big budget. And then Bourne came out. The Bourne Ultimatum, Bourne Supremacy, Bourne Identity. I don't know why I went in reverse order, but I did. That came out and that made a kind of very gritty, very realistic, different, darker take on a spy where he had all, he didn't really have gadget, but like the disposal of Treadstone or, like great fighting skills or great intellect. But it was the fighting style, and those, when you look at the James Bond movies, they are very bombastic and spectacles, and it was all about the gadgets, where when Bourne, it was all, stabs a guy in his hand with a pen, and it was that progression of close-up fights, great cuts, just these long, drawn-out, seem like, maybe they're not realistic, maybe someone would die a bit sooner in real life in a fight, but they seem like they're going for a realistic tone. And then once Casino Royale, I'm on a roll. I'm going to take a drink and then see if that helps with this rolling. Once Casino Royale came out, you could see, and obviously they say these buzzwords, and I'm not sure, maybe they said this, but I just remember at the time it was like, we want to do a new take, blah, blah, blah. But honestly, it was like, we want to make Bond into Bourne, but we don't have the rights to Bourne movie, and we want to make more Bond movies, so we're going to take that approach. And that's what it feels like for me, it was even strange because I do think of Twilight Zone in this like whimsical sense, almost like Amazing Stories, which Spielberg is bringing back for Apple, in a more whimsical kind of, I'd say it always leaned more to the thriller than the horror side. The horror would be maybe an outcome or the twist reveal, but it was never, it was more morality play. And these episodes still are, but when it was, because it is updated, it is about, there's swearing, there's in one episode, there's lots of sex innuendo and talking about like, doing some oral sex. Like there's lots of jabs thrown out. And it's something that when I was watching it, I'm enjoying it, but I just felt from someone that has seen the original stuff, it felt weird. And that's exactly what it felt like, where Twilight Zone came out so many years ago, and you have so many people that have copied it, adapted for the times, and now you have something which, in my opinion, it's biggest competition in Black Mirror. I don't think it'll hurt each other, because I don't think it is that situation at different times. Jordan Peele's hot. I'm not even saying like that, where it's like, in a WWE versus, AEW New Japan sort of thing. It's not like that. It's just that, or a Marvel versus DC. It's just they are comparable because Black Mirror has taken that touchstone. I feel like, and at least when the way it was talked about from my grandpa and grandma, those were the cooler, like the water cooler talk when you saw those episodes and like, oh, that Twister when they did that. Black Mirror is that. Black Mirror is the Twilight Zone of this generation. So to see Twilight Zone come back and kind of try to do that, almost like I said, what Bond was doing with Bourne, try to adapt to me. We're going to be more adult. We're going to have a bit more racier topics. I think they do that, but I don't think it does that in a way where, and they're doing it, they're adapting to it, but I don't think they're definitely not going as hard as Black Mirror, but I don't think that's the intention. But that's where I'd say that maybe with Black Mirror, why it is so successful is because there's lots of great horror anthology shows out there, but that just felt like the first episode, and spoilers for the first episode for Black Mirror, so skip ahead 30 seconds if you don't want to hear, but it's about a guy being forced to fuck a pig, and he has to fuck a pig, and the episode ends with him fucking the pig. And right away, when that first episode happens, you know what you're in for. You know this is a show that is no holds barred. This is not that. And what it needs to do has to have strong episodes that are, if you're not going to go as hardcore as, it's almost a way of comparing like a Logan to a Dark Knight, where Logan has these very dark moments and very grotesque moments, where Dark Knight has a lot more subtlety and a lot more, and I shouldn't say that. Maybe that's a bad comparison, but I feel like Logan uses a lot of use of violence to portray sadness, like when a certain character dies or certain fight scenes. It invokes that emotions, or even spoilers for Logan, jump 30 seconds. God, it's been out for so long. Even Logan's death, just the look of that, right? But with Dark Knight, it's more of that mind game. It's more of that, what is this man willing to do to stop another man who will stop at nothing to get his way? So that's where I feel like, and Logan has those themes. I'm not saying that, but I just feel like it is that kind of, you look at, to me, a great, in my piece, a masterpiece of a comic book film in PG-13, and then a masterpiece in rated R. Logan can do things differently than Dark Knight because it has that R. So that's why Dark Knight is, to me, stronger in certain cases, like the villain. That's what I feel like this has to be, and that's where I feel like these are good episodes, but I don't feel that I really enjoy it because I think it's just, I like these concepts, and I like the idea of another horror anthology show going around, and I really enjoy it, but I don't think it is like Black Mirror, where it is, you gotta see it, I recommend this to a bunch of people. That's the thing. I want to wait till the season's done. I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm going to stick with it, but it's not something that it's not revolutionizing horror anthology right now. But it's kind of just sticking its kind of feet into the water. And you know what? And it could be too much expectations I'm putting on it, but I just think it is a classic brand. It is, to me, it's a brand that I hold in high esteemed, and I don't think they're doing it any injustice, not at all. I'm really enjoying these episodes, the two episodes I did, but the two episodes that they did put out, I enjoyed. But the first one, like I said, I feel is a little predictable. We've kind of been there, done that a little bit, but for myself, I overly enjoy it because I liked what world they set in, and I really like the lead actor. And the second episode is more of just a fun horror thriller, more just a thriller. It's a tribute to an old episode, but it's just a thriller, but it's not in the thriller. It's not the great quality in the sense where you gotta watch this, because there's a lot of stuff kind of, I feel, left unexplained. Maybe I didn't catch some stuff, but it's just kind of like, what's this twisty tale? And the twisty tale it's fun, but it's nothing I haven't read in a Goosebumps novel. And again, these sound like bad jabs, and I hate that I'm doing this, actually, because Us is the same way, where I do like Us, and there's some things I really like, and there's some stuff like that end scene. I won't get into it, but one of the end scenes is definitely gonna be my Golden Geese nomination for best scene of the year. With Jordan Peele and the qualities he's held up to and people have talked about, when I went in, I was expecting a lot more. I was expecting a lot more from this, but I wasn't blown away by these episodes. So that's what I think in non-spoilers. I guess, once again, who I'd recommend for, if you like horror anthology stuff, Tales from the Crypt, stuff like that, check this out. I think you'll enjoy it. It's just the first 2 episodes. If you're not like, and if you like Black Mirror, I'd say, let's say you've never watched these and you've just only been watching Black Mirror. Someone like, I think Dylan might be in that case because he's not the biggest movie TV guy. He's kind of started that once he did the podcast, so he has like a lot of holes. I don't know what I'd have to ask him, but I feel like Black Mirror is the only anthology series he's seen, and I'd like him to watch maybe a few of these episodes and be like, does this hold up? Do you like this kind of different route, or is it just because Black Mirror now is, I feel like I said, so adult and without kid gloves? Do you want the, to me, a little more watered down version? But they're doing that because they're, I think, trying to focus a bit more, like I said, whimsical and all the story aspect of Twilight Zone. Even though, like I said, they're dropping F-bombs like crazy in this show, so it's not your granddaddy's Twilight Zone. And if you just don't like horror thriller, then don't watch this at all. So yeah, or maybe watch select episodes if things interest you. But I'd say definitely check out these 2. I think even if you just like mainstream horror, Freddy or Jason, it's good. It's like I said, I maybe sounded a little harsh on it before, but just because it's a very nostalgic brand for me, so I want the best in it. And I think it's interesting to see how it compares to kind of like a juggernaut Black Mirror is. So I'm going to do some spoilers. They're not going to be long. I'm just going to talk about the stories that are there. So I'm going to take my last water break. Well, I won't say that. I'm going to take a water break, get your 3, 2, 1, and then spoilers will be happening. So 3, 2, 1. Let's start with the comedian. I don't have, like I said, much to say on these because they're not big first episodes, but it starts with, and I think that's the other thing Twilight Zone does have going for it this time around, because I don't remember much of the 60s as far as who the stars were. I didn't, I was... at that age, I was not looking for actors and like who's this and who's that, and at that age as well, I wouldn't have known a lot of these 60 stars. The 2000s show, I remember for myself not really having that many big stars, so this is a big step up. I like seeing when they do that at the end of the comedian, they just show what's coming, and there's like Zazie Beetz and Seth Rogen and Jacob Tremblay. It's just like, I honestly just want to watch these episodes. Even if these episodes were not the greatest, I'd probably still be watching them just because this cast is great, but because at least the show is good to entertaining, I'm very excited to see what's next. So the comedian starts with a guy, Kumail is playing a guy who he is trying to be a stand-up comedian, a successful stand-up comedian. He's working at a comedy club, and he's telling jokes that are trying to get a point across. It's about gun control. That's his main joke. It's something about how one side of the nation wants guns to be taken away and or not to be taken away, and just to have any rights on their guns. And I can't remember the actual setup of the joke because I'm not American. I don't know the gun laws, but it's something like the first thing of the institution or the Constitution says like something like the guns will, everyone can have guns, but they need to be distributed. I'm paraphrasing, need to be distributed at a responsible, safe level. So that's his shtick, right? And he's going off that, and it's not really getting many laughs. It's a dead crowd. He goes back into the bar. Tracy Morgan is there playing some character. I can't remember, but he's like a comedy legend. I feel like he's almost playing like an Eddie Murphy. And Kumail's like, oh man, like it's great to see, like it's great to meet you. You were the best. Like, where did you go? You had it all. And you just disappeared. And he kind of just, back and forth. They kind of talk and whatnot. And then he just says, if you have any pointers, what would you give me? And you can tell right away. They like, and that's where I'd say like the predictability comes in. He's playing like the mustache twirler, like, this guy is not up to anything good. And I don't mind that. Like, that's what I mean. Like, it is predictable. So that's why to me, it's not going to be put on this level of like, oh, you have to see this. That was crazy. But I still like stories like that. That's why I fucking love, I didn't mention it in the non-spoilers, I love Goosebumps. Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark, I watch those all the time. And those are some of those obvious shit all. And I like that. So Tracy Morgan, fun to see him do some dramatic. And he's pretty much just saying that you need to, at first he's saying you got to talk about yourself. People don't want to know about what you think. They want to know about you. And he's just saying, you got to expose yourself, get out there and start talking about yourself. And just if you're willing to put yourself out there and willing to, maybe share stuff or lose stuff in your life, then you could move forward. After that, we kind of get set up of his life, Kumail's life of he has a girlfriend and she's a lawyer, and she has this like a kind of annoying mentor and whatnot. At one point, he's taking his what is it? Oh no, this was just the family life. So that's all that is. And then he goes back to the club another night and he's doing the same kind of gun routine. and it's not going well. So he starts to change his mind, and he changes his mind mid-set because all of them look very glazed over, and he's like, "Oh, you look like my dog when she's taking a crap." She's like, "Why are you looking at me?" Blah blah blah. And then when he goes home, dog's gone, never existed. Talks to girlfriend, "What are you talking about?" Blah blah blah. And then the next day brings her nephew to the comedy show, does a set, same thing, starts with a gun. It's dead silent. He starts talking about like, "Oh, I really am bombing. I must be bad. My 10-year-old nephew told me I was bad," and goes and rant about him. He goes looking for him after the show, can't find him. He's disappeared. He is gone. And at this point, too, I forgot to mention the only thing at the beginning. They set up that he kind of has, there's one girl, I think her name's Dee Dee or something like that, where she is kind of the top tier comedy act right now. Nothing huge, but just like at the club, she's one of the ones on the newcomers to beat. So they set that up, and so nephew's missing, and pretty much what it is, as the episode continues to go on, it is you can become famous, and as the show goes on, he's getting more followers, getting more traction, but it's like, what are you willing to put up? And that was Tracy Morgan kind of talking about him as well, and that's what I liked about this episode is it became pretty predictable what he was going to do. I liked kind of the middle portion of him almost having this superpower of he starts targeting people from his high school, his old life that he knew that were maybe bad people or turned out to be bad people, because if they don't die, they just never existed and they're gone. So it's like, oh, no one's going to miss these kind of pieces of crap. And it was a fun morality play and I feel like that is something that is personal to a lot of artists is anybody with your music, comedy, TV, even sometimes here with the podcast, it's like, do you want to grow and you want to, oh, did you hear that? That was a good one. You want to grow and you want to put out your morals. So you don't want to grow and be into, like, you don't want to grow as someone not yourself. You want to go out there and do the best you can with what you're going on, but it's a way of, well, you could be bigger, but you just might have to sell out. And that's one thing I wish they maybe made Kamel's character feel a bit more regretful, as far as just they didn't get over of, so he wants to tell these jokes, and he's talked about in the show like he wants to make a difference. He wants his comedy to mean something, and Tracy Morgan's character, that doesn't really matter. And once Kamel starts telling these jokes, everyone's laughing at the crowd. He's killing the crowd every time. He never seems, and I guess because there's bigger things going on, he's making people disappear, but he still never seems like, I didn't think that was the biggest struggle, where it was still like, and I know it's not supposed to be, but he's still at never point just like, I don't even like these jokes, like I'm really selling out. It just becomes that people are disappearing, and I get that. I think I'm being nitpicky, but just at the beginning, it was just like, oh, I'm telling these jokes that to me, he didn't even think were that funny. And that it's a little bit addressed near the end, but that's kind of the morality play is, you can stick to your morals and take the high ground and be preaching and try to make a difference. But that might not get you anywhere, because a lot of people are doing that, and people maybe want to go away from that in their personal life. That's why we try to, other than After Nines, we try to keep things not political. I lots of times make jokes and stuff like that, but on the podcast, we try to, unless it is an episode, like an After Nine rant, where we tell you, hey, this is an episode where we're going to talk about anything. We might talk about movies, we might talk about politics, we might talk about food, whatever it is, but we might talk about it. Where with Geek Verse, I try to, there's the odd time I will 100%, because sometimes and most time it comes down to bad trolls, and that's where that almost for me was when that argument comes in there, where you want to make a difference. Do I make a difference? No, but if there's one listener who sends out some like, oh, I hate Brie Larson because she hates white men, no, I'd like to sit that person down while they're listening and be like, hey, this is the story, this is what's actually been said, or you're just wrong with thinking that, and if there's one person that heard that and made a difference, then great. But it's the same thing with this, is he can stick to his guns and just be a moderate success, but maybe not do it as a career, not live the lifestyle, because like he says in the show, I want to be a comedian to have, a luxurious life and be successful. Or do you sell out and tell jokes and material that you're not a fan of, and even more so in this show, taking it to the extreme, and I think that's what they're trying to get to, is are you willing to let people disappear and go out of your life? And it's fun. It's fun. It's played up very comedically throughout the episode for a while, and then in the end it gets very dark because he at one point gets a fight with his girlfriend about the mentor, kind of saying he wants to sleep with you, makes him disappear, and shows how vital he was in her life, which was strange because I kind of get what they're going for, saying like, oh, a mentor, like he was the mentor, and she was a lawyer. When he gets rid of Dave was the guy's name, the mentor, she's no longer a lawyer, and it's like, oh, she's only a lawyer because of him. I think that was a bit stretched, but that's what you're going for. They do break up, and as the show goes on, you just see that he is feeling it more and more. There's kind of like a talent scout there that seems like their version of SNL that's there, and at the end he needs to kill it, and he just decides the girl who's in competition with, he's going to disappear. He's just disappearing everybody. His girlfriend comes back. Throughout the show, he's writing names down in the book who he could say, and he's been wasting them on. She is a completely different character than she was at the beginning because they have a whole different relationship. Like, when they were together at the beginning, they went to Paris. They had a good relationship. They almost broke up, but they worked out. But this seems like at the point where they were breaking up and there was no saving the relationship. So she just calls him out on stage, and they kind of set up that you think that, and like I said, throughout the whole show, he talks Tracy Morgan. I feel like he should have been more regretful because at one point he's talking about to Tracy, he's like, this is murder, like this is, and he's kind of like, oh, well, no, they just don't exist. He's like, that's schematics. And he did do that to himself earlier, but I feel like the only way Camille was starting to get down about is because it was really affecting his life, because at the end of the day when he was murdering a bunch of people or getting rid of a bunch of people, he didn't care because they were bad people. But the second it affected his life, he was like, oh, I never wanted to take out people or kill people, so it was like, okay, fine, a little rush there. And then they kind of set up that he's mad at his ex-girlfriend. They got in a fight. She's kind of exposing him. The crowd, there's one point where it's just like, oh, he's gonna get this heckler. Like, it's great because this crowd is like evilly in on it in some way. And he starts talking about himself and then makes himself disappear. So it's this kind of big morality, and they even have Jordan Peele say it of like, this guy who started as nobody, gave up everything to be somebody, but at the end chose to be nobody so he could, save the woman he loves. So I really liked it. That's gonna be a tough one to beat for me because it was predictable, but I am a big fan of stand-up comedy, so I liked having that around. I liked the main star, and I did like it. Like I said, it was a little predictable. There's the little things I would have liked some more fleshing out, or I had some questions on, like I said, about Camille, kind of his conscience, but I really, really enjoyed this episode. And then the next episode was the Terror at 30,000 feet or above 30,000 feet. I should just look it up, but I'm not gonna because that would kill the momentum of this review. It was good. It was just a fun kind of, I'd say, thriller romp. This guy, it's Adam Scott. He's an investigating journalist. He gets on a plane and you meet a bunch of stuff there. I'm not gonna go through the whole episode in this one because this one is just kind of a few twists and turns. But he is listening to a podcast, and the podcast is describing what is gonna happen on this plane. He saw before he got on the plane. It's October 15th. The flight is 10:15. What was the time he boards the flight is 10:15. So there's all these coincidences, and the podcast, I think, number episode that he's listening to is 10:15. I can't remember the name of the actual show, but he's listening to it, and it's describing what has happened to him so far, and pretty much what it is the podcast is describing what exactly happens to this plane, which apparently the plane is flying somewhere and then it disappears and it crashes, and he has this podcast, and verbatim it is telling him, like, he'll do something and the podcast will say that's what happened. Or at one point he's going to fight with a flight attendant. Someone records the clip, puts on YouTube, and then the podcast is like, oh, and there was this clip that was released out like just a few minutes before the flight went missing, and it's the exact same clip that he was doing. So it's just an investigative tale. I enjoyed it. I liked it. But it's not anything that I think was amazing. It's just kind of, and nothing's really explained, and you're not going to, lots of these type of episodes you won't, because it's just very fantastical, right? How this podcast get here. And I felt like at the end, Jordan Peele does this, because what happens, and that's why it's spoiler discussion, I'm going to get through, but the plane, it's all this big thing is he met this guy early in the episode who's a big fan of his because he writes for a magazine. He's a big fan, and they kind of set him up as he's kind of his, not buddy, but just in a way he could trust him. And it's set up that Adam Scott is the one that makes the plane crash by trying to, it's kind of like, chicken before the egg scenario. Like, how did this happen? Like, this happens, but the only reason he's doing it is, are you doing that because maybe I shouldn't say chicken, eggs, and arrow. It's like time travel where it's like you're going to bump into that wall and then the person bumps into that wall. Did they bump the wall because the person mentioned it, or were they always going to bump into the wall? And that's what this is kind of playing on. And then at the end, so the plane crashes, and then there's a fun little end point where he gets another episode, and they're like, oh, we have more on this vanishing plane. Like, it was found by a cargo ship. And he's like, oh, and he's like, but all the survivors were found except for one. And all the survivors of the plane, because he constantly is screwing things up. It's very John Lithgow, like I said, in the classic Twilight Zone. He's like, we got to do this. So he makes the plane crash. The guy that was the buddy is revealed to be evil. He helped him out kind of indirectly. When he gets in the episode, it's like, oh, except for one. And he's the one that didn't make off the island. All the survivors of the plane, just murder him. Just murder him on the island. So it was a fun little thriller thing. But at the end, Jordan Peele even goes like, oh, the top investigator was so worried about everyone else. He didn't take time to investigate himself or what was right in front of him. And I was like, all right, yeah, like, I guess there was a lesson, but you can't blame the fucking guy. Like, I get it, but it felt like a very loose, like, all right, sure, like, that's the lesson. So that's what I want to say about Twilight Zone. Like I said, those are my recommendations at front. Let me know if you watched it, if you have any theories. Same thing with the Adam Scott one. Maybe if you have more to add upon it, if I missed anything, because at that point I was blending some stuff that was not loud, but it was still just I have subtitles on all the time. That's what happens when you have a 1.5-year-old. They can be crying. So I was following along, but maybe it's just because I was not engaged that I didn't catch anything new. There's something cool where they had a magazine of Kumail Nanjiani's character from the previous episode, and they had Jacob Tremblay, who was coming up in an episode, so that was really cool. And even at the beginning of Kumail's episode, a plane flies above him over top before he's going to the club, so it's almost like maybe, it is the same world. There's some connection there. So let me know if you have any theories or anything you want to get out there. Thank you very much for tuning in this review. If you want to watch what we do or listen, all the details are in the description down below, and please go subscribe, like, review, rate, everything you can do to help. When you hear from me next, it'll not be boring.